You and your colleagues will constantly need to give names to text files, variables, functions, and other entities in your code and documentation. The latter is applicable when you make it to the level of creating your own software. The choice of which naming convention to stick to in different circumstances is key, as the way in which you will name your text files and variables in Python is a sign of good or bad coding style. If the names you use are not clear or are misleading, or if they don't correspond to any common or intra-company standard, this will not be accepted by your peers as best practice. Not only that, but these names might be so confusing that you may incite people to focus on the names you've used rather than on the main issues that your code aims to resolve. At the end of the day, don't forget that when you code, you always want to show that you are a highly skilled professional. You can't allow yourself not to stick to best practices. Therefore, because it will save a lot of time and will reduce the effort of others to understand your work, you will usually be provided with rules to abide by before you deliver your project, and you won't be allowed to use your own naming convention. In any case, though, we'd like to provide a brief explanation of the most frequently encountered naming conventions. We will also tell you when we will adopt them in our course, and we will explain why. Upper camel case. This is a naming convention in which the name you give is composed of multiple words that are attached in a sensible order, and the first letter of each of these words is capital. Lower camel case is very similar. The difference is that the first letter of only the first word is lowercase. Python is a case-sensitive language, therefore using upper camel case to name your classes or column names, for instance, can be a great idea. We will adopt this practice in our work. For example, upper camel case, loan ID. Lower camel case, loan ID. Lowercase letters separated by underscores. This naming convention has been recommended by Python for names other than class names or constants. We won't need to deal with any of the latter two terms, so this naming convention will help us a great deal internally, i.e., when naming our Python functions and variables. You may hear this naming convention also as snake underscore case. An example that illustrates it is prices underscore per underscore category. Thinking beyond Python, you will often encounter names, particularly file names, where multiple words have been separated by a hyphen. That is, hyphens have been used instead of spaces. This naming convention has been called in a few ways, but interestingly, the most popular of them is the kebab case. Because this naming convention can be useful while sending files over the internet, we will adopt it for naming our text files. Like lendingcompany.csv. As a first general rule, you shouldn't leave spaces between words in the name of a file or object. Different pieces of software may treat empty space in different ways, and sometimes they might even be unable to do so. Remember, don't use white spaces when naming files or programming entities. In other words, don't use filename01.csv. Second, and still very important, although this is more stylistic rather than technical, try to use names that are concise and specific. For instance, don't use numeric underscore variable. Try to be specific. What is this numeric variable going to be used for? For example, loan underscore price. What is important to take away from this note is to be careful when naming text files and Python objects. We will pay attention to this ourselves throughout the entire course code. This way, we can be sure that once you go through it, you will have developed the habit of using the different naming conventions at the right time. This will do for now. See you in the next video.